Do not say it. Do not say it. Do not fucking say it.
Oh, hey, this is kind of like JoJo's Bizarre Adventure.
I fucking hate my life.
Hello everyone, Astral here, back with another video. Welcome to, or back to, my channel. Today we'll be talking about Astral Chain, a 2019 Switch exclusive game that I personally think is extremely underrated and not talked about enough. And, I feel like I'm forgetting something. Oh right, this was, excluding ports and remasters, my favorite Switch game of all time. So, Astral Chain is an action game developed by Platinum Games, arguably the king of the genre, with games like Nier Automata, which I'm playing right now, so expect a review of that soon, and Bayonetta and more. From the small amount of titles that I've played by them, I love Platinum Games. Of course, they're amazing at making in-game combat engaging and fun, but even aside from that, I love their creativity-focused development philosophy, their sense of humor, and more. This was originally intended to be another Years Later video, and in case you haven't seen that series, it's where I take a look at games at least 5 years after their original release. Because yes, in August, this game will somehow be 5 years old, but just recently, Hideki Kamiya, co-founder of Platinum Games and supervisor/co-director of this game, left the company, and as sad as it was to see him go, I wanted to appreciate his work and rediscover it in a game that I loved. So I replayed Astral Chain, and now I'm making this video. And by the way, this video's format will be kind of similar to those videos because it was originally intended to be one. Here's how this review will work. First, I'll talk about the story, characters, art, music, and non-formulaic categories about the game that I either liked or disliked. And finally, I'll decide on whether I think it is still my favorite Switch game of all time and deliver a final review score for it. Before I get into the review though, if you aren't subscribed yet, please consider doing so. The new monetization requirement on YouTube is 500 subscribers, and I'm trying to hit that goal by the end of the year. I talk about games, anime, music, and other shit, so if you're interested, please like, subscribe, turn post notifications on, and all that shit. Thank you. Anyways, without further ado, here we go.
Spoiler warning for the early game, aka chapters 1 through 2.
Astral Chain starts out with a cutscene showing a nice old man named Yosef and a blue-haired doctor named Brenda who
activate the Astral Chain.
Oh my god, that's the name of the game! Performing experiments on these strange alien-like creatures, chaining them up and turning them into cubes. Yosef then asks Brenda if the next two candidates for something have been selected. And not only is the answer yes, but there's something really special about these candidates, and hey, one of them's us! So this intro segment leads into us getting to choose and customize our player character. You're given the option of choosing either the brother or sister of these twins, and since I originally chose the male character when I first played the game, I decided to play as the female character for this run. And oh my god, the customization, it's so good! As my longtime viewers probably know, I'm an absolute sucker for character customization in my games, so unsurprisingly, I spent nearly half an hour customizing my character. Anyways, the character you don't choose becomes Akira, your angsty twin sibling sidekick, and depending on how you customize your character, the whole twin thing will make absolutely no sense. And almost immediately after you choose your character, aside from a bit more dialogue, you are thrown right into a motorcycle chase fight sequence, and it's so fucking fun. Like, this right here is why Platinum Games is the king of the action genre. And after some driving and shooting, we arrive at a crazy scene. Humans are turning into grotesque-looking monsters, and we even see some of those alien things from earlier. But just when things look dire, Max, the commander of a task force, and also our dad, saves us from an alien. That thing that he saved us with is called a Legion, and you might be thinking, hey, isn't that one of those alien guys? Well, sort of. See, it's the future, and the aliens, called chimeras, have pushed humanity down to their last legs. But luckily, a foundation called Neuron has found a way to tame these chimeras and turn them into legions, which can be used to fight back. Our dad is the leader of Neuron's task force, charged with using these legions to fight for humanity. But we learn all of that later. For now, we gotta fight some chimeras. So Yosef, the guy from earlier who's Neuron's commander, orders Papa Max to hand over his legion and let us fight with it. Obviously, since we are his child, he is reluctant to do so, so Yosef has to be all like, hand over the Legion or you won't get butt-fucked later, baby girl. And Max is all like, okay fine, and hands it over. Anyways, we're somehow magically incredible at this on our very first try, and Why am I looking at my own character's ass? And we dispel the crisis. After a sick anime opening, we find ourselves in Neuron's headquarters, and Yoshihisa is all like, yeah, the themes you are gifted, very gifted indeed. He recaps pretty much all of what I talked about earlier, tells us that we are now part of the task force, and sends us on our way with our new legions. So now that we're a part of Neuron, let's meet everyone. Alicia and Jin are a part of the task force with us, Akira, and Max, and they're cool. That is pretty much all I have to say about them because they become significantly less important with every chapter. Then we have Olive, our operator, Brenda, remember her from earlier, the doctor, and Marie.
Oh, no. Little guy. I bought so much cat food. The good stuff, too. Oh, now what am I gonna do? Eat it myself?
Let us romance the characters, Platinum Games. Let us romance the fucking characters.
Marie is a general affairs officer, meaning that she spends most of her time cleaning or filing paperwork. But in addition to this, she also has a secret identity. Not Batman, not Spider-Man, Lappy, the Neuron mascot. Except it's not that big of a secret because everyone knows that she's Lappy. But she tries her best, and I will not have anyone insulting her. So yeah, I absolutely love Marie, and she is probably my favorite character, fuck you. Anyways, I already talked about Max and Yosef, and the other characters are either not important enough to talk about, or they just appear later. But now that we've gotten all of that out of the way, it's time for more action. Oh, wait, no, it's time for tutorials. Look, I really love this game, but god, the tutorials really kill the momentum, especially after that sick action sequence from the beginning. They're so tedious and overly long, and I won't lie, they absolutely could have just been things for you to learn during actual missions with button commands and shit. Not to mention, this is my second time playing the game. I already know what I'm doing. Shouldn't I be able to, skip it? What do you think, Lappy? Jesus Christ! But after the tutorial, we get started on Chapter 2's main mission. Or sorry, File 2, because for some reason, the chapters are called files in this game, which isn't confusing at all, because it's not like it files a save data or anything. Yeah, we start our first real mission, in which we have to investigate a chimera attack, and this is where the game really kicks off. One thing that I love about the game is that even outside of the action, it's fun. There are stealth segments, puzzles, a lappy game, and more, all of which are an absolute blast. Another one of these non-action elements is investigation, which we do in this case. Basically, it involves going around, discovering things, asking locals questions, taking notes, and even doing cool side quests. And once you're finished with this segment, you're quizzed on your knowledge of the situation, using your notes to answer the questions. I found this really entertaining. Honestly, even outside the fights, the gameplay was extremely fun and almost never repetitive, in my opinion at least. After our investigation, we find the chimera that was responsible for the attack, but when we fight it, we end up getting dragged into the astral plane, the home of the chimeras. But unfortunately, the boss isn't the only problem, because after we defeat it, the whole team's legions go rogue and we have to fight to get them back. And during this altercation, our dad, Max, dies in a sad, heroic sacrifice to get us back to Earth. Except, it isn't actually sad, because this is the second fucking chapter of the game. We are barely into it, and as a result, we barely know any of these characters. We're expected to get emotional about Max's death, but we literally only know that he's our dad, he's serious, and he's the captain of the force. We don't know anything else about him. The game literally waits until after his death to dump his backstory on us. I have, well, certain complaints regarding the characters, and I didn't really care too much about Max, but the game could have made his death slightly more impactful by, I don't know, saving it until later in the game, or at the very least, giving us some semblance of a backstory for him before he just died. But yeah, we get back from the astral plane, everyone's sad, Akira's all, "Grr, Daddy's death was my fault, I could have saved him," and we are now tasked with getting those legions back. This more or less kicks off the game's main story, and as promised, I won't spoil anything past this point. Except for in some parts of this video, but I'll put spoiler warnings for those parts. I played this game back when I was 13, and when I was 13...
Yup, you heard it right. Tony Kawa is a romantic comedy about an absolute Chad.
I talked like this, so obviously I didn't understand what made a story good or bad. In playing Astral Chain now, yes, I still absolutely love the game, but no, the story is not great. But before I get all negative, let's focus on the things that make Astral Chain so great, starting with the action. It's clear to see that Platinum Games put their whole Platinumlessy into the combat system because holy shit, it is maybe one of the best ones in any video game. The Legion system works so well and it's so much fun to use, and it makes it so that combat is always thrilling and satisfying. It's fast-paced, tight, and fun throughout the entire runtime. Not to mention, throughout the game you unlock even more legions. You start with the sword one before unlocking the arrow, arm, beast, and axe legions. And all of these legions are unique, and playing as them is so cool. And even outside of the combat, the gameplay is super fun. Like I said, segments such as investigation and stealth are an absolute blast to play, but even outside of those, there's so much more to be found. Cleaning up red matter, using your different legions for specific tasks, doing legion maintenance, and doing side quests all show the creativity and uniqueness of the game. And more importantly, they're all fun. But of course, it's tough to have a good game without good art and music. And luckily, Astral Chain's art is fantastic. The characters, environments, enemies, visual effects, and even more perfectly reflect that cyberpunk sci-fi vibe and are beautiful to look at. The music's incredible too. Did you know that the credits theme I use at the end of all my videos is from this game? Well, now you know. I've said it before and I'll say it again. There are so many aspects that show that the dev team really cared about this game. It's a clear passion project that lives up to the Platinum Games name. There are a bunch of non-formulaic categories that are incredible as well. I kinda touched on this one earlier, but the expansive character customization was absolutely sick. Not only were you able to change your hair, eyes, skin color, etc., you could also get new outfits and accessories for your character to wear. Like, you get the option to have a fucking bird on your head. That is how insane the customization in this game is. But even aside from the characters, it's awesome. You can customize the color schemes of each of your legions down to a fucking T, and you can even go as far as to customizing the UI color. So yeah, the customization is great, but that's not all. You can take pictures with an in-game camera, you can rescue and feed cats and keep them in a safe shelter that you can visit at pretty much any time. You can't pet them, but you can pet the doggy legion. You can talk to a tsundere vending machine with more personality than some of the human characters in the game. And the best part, you can shit. That's right everyone, we have a main character who canonically shits. And also, there's a toilet fairy who gives you item rewards for helping her out with toilet paper. Yes, this is a real game. There are 3 more notable pros about the game that I'll cover before moving into the cons, but before I do that, let me just say that there will be spoilers ranging from mild to pretty heavy discussed when I cover them. So if you don't want anything spoiled, please skip to the timestamp displayed on screen. Spoiler alert for the cons section, I found the story and characters to be kinda underwhelming. But that doesn't mean I dislike them, and there were some really good aspects of both of them. As for the main characters, I loved Marie, Olive, Brenda, Alicia, and Hal. The problem with a lot of the characters was that they were either generic and bland, barely developed, or not developed at all, or both. Olive, Hal, and Brenda, however, are somewhat original characters with solid development, especially in the later game when they betray Neuron to help you.
You know, I first met Brenda on the day Neuron was founded, and it was love at first sight, but, like, for friends.
I am pretty sure that Olive is also a closeted lesbian, so she gets bonus points for that. Alicia and Marie, on the other hand, as much as I loved them, they did kind of fall into the generic/developmentless category, but come on. Tell me you saw the scene with Marie rescuing the kitty and didn't find it adorable. She's my favorite. As for the story, it definitely had its moments where it broke out of its genericness and became pretty interesting. Witnessing Akira have a full-blown identity crisis when discovering that his Raven team members were all creepy clones of him was kind of bone-chilling. And having to kill him, yes, your own twin brother at the end of the game, was crazy. But those are more or less just pieces of the story that I enjoyed. Where I'd argue the story shines the most is in File 6, Complicit. This entire part of the game was absolutely incredible. In Complicit, you join Hal on a mission in Sector V, a Neuron-neglected, crime and poverty-filled area that task force members are prohibited from entering. And it's as cool as it sounds. Before you even get into Sector V, you have to sneak around and take out other Neuron soldiers, and after that, you're introduced to what feels like a whole new world compared to the rest of the game. Hell, even more so than the Astral plane, which is actually a completely different world. As cool as the futuristic cyberpunk environments are, seeing the rundown, drab, and depressing area that is Sector V really begins to hint that Neuron isn't what it's cracked up to be at all. and it adds a huge sense of realism to a game set in the fucking future. You traverse these environments, take quests, chat with citizens, discover the shady underground group known as the Hermits, and meet Kyle, their absolute baby girl of a leader.
That's bad for you, bad for us, and horrible for the human race.
But the best part about this file is that it's probably the darkest one in the game. Look guys, please ignore the fact that the underground criminal organization leader's name is fucking Kyle, alright? It's dark. Some crazy shit goes down in this case. A doctor becomes indirectly responsible for the chimerification, or redshift, of many of the hermits and kills himself. A near-apocalyptic battle between yourself and some insane-ass monsters ensues, and you end up getting in trouble with Neuron for coming in the first place. A conflict that's resolved like 5 minutes later, but still. All of this shit is so fucking cool. And unfortunately, it's the closest the game gets to having an actually interesting story. That's right, it's time to get into the cons. I already talked about some of them earlier, but I do have some more. Aside from the aforementioned interesting story beats, Astral Chain's story is sadly usually generic and filled with anime tropes. That isn't to say that the story's terrible, it's just more often than not, unoriginal and derivative, and the game deserves better. It has such a cool concept, like, come on. The same can pretty much be said for the characters, but with more highs and lows. The characters that I talked about earlier that I liked may not all be completely original or developed, but they were interesting enough, and I think the game could get away without developing characters like Marie that much. But there are far too many characters in this game who are just generic or not developed whatsoever, or both. And once again, this section will contain spoilers, so skip to the timestamp displayed on screen if you want to avoid them. Sorry. The NPCs and less important characters are pretty much all generic. That isn't necessarily a bad thing. Like what I said about the story, generic characters and stories aren't awful. They're just not as good as they could be. Plus, I think you can get away with making relatively insignificant characters more tropey. But the problem is that some of this genericness feeds into the main characters and even the villains. Akira, the sibling character, is kinda just there. The game can't really decide what personality they want to give him, so at some point they just decide to not really give him one. He has his cool moments, some of which I talked about earlier, but aside from that, it feels like the only emotions he displays are forced through whatever's going on in the story. But the villains are hit the hardest. Jenna Anderson... Jenna Anderson. I'm sorry. Her name is so fucking boring, and it's hilarious for that exact reason. Ramses, in his video about the game, he makes a really funny point about it, so watch that and you'll understand just how funny it is. Anyways, Jenna could have been a cool villain. You're told that she's evil and fucking with Neuron and sent to defeat her. But as the story goes on, you start to wonder if it's really her who's evil, or if it's Neuron that is. But she never says or does anything of interest aside from fighting you, up until the very end, when you turn into a legion and she's all like, "Oh, I knew Yosef was evil all along and I was trying to tell you." I get it. Her motives are actually in the right, but her actions are questionable. But we never learn anything about her, aside from a very vague backstory, and it makes her a very boring character. And similarly, Yosef, the commander of Neuron and the not-so-secret main villain of the game. The first problem is that it is so obvious that he's the main villain that they don't even try to hide it. The second problem is that he makes even less sense than Jenna. I have played this game twice now. 2 whole fucking times. I have 60 hours in this game, and I still, for the life of me, am unable to completely figure out what exactly Yosef had going on. I don't really know what his motivation was, or what he was trying to do completely. Like, I kinda get it, but it's still confusing as hell, and you don't want that in your game. All we know is that what he's doing is bad and that we need to stop him, and that he's doing some sort of human instrumentality project kinda thing. But it's not elaborated on nearly enough, and it's not interesting either. How in the fuck do you manage to take the one interesting part of Evangelion and fail to make it interesting in your game? The entire final chapter of the game is an absolute mess, but it's easy to ignore that because the fight leading up to it is really fun, and the final cutscene is pretty cool too. I was going to complain about the crazy difficulty spike in the final battle, But when I replayed it, while I still did think it was much harder than the other fights, it was significantly easier than I remember it being, and much more enjoyable as well. It took a bunch of tries during my first playthrough, but I beat it on my first try and my second one, so... Back to complaining though. Some of the smaller writing points are just a little bit fucking stupid. Like, when you go to rescue Brenda, why the hell does she just walk up to you like she wasn't being hunted down by 8,000 guards? Some of the dialogue in the game feels a little unnatural at times too, especially during some of the side quests. Like, why the hell is this woman so fucking eager to just let you take her pet cat to some undisclosed location? In short, aside from some high highs and some low lows, the story and characters in Astral Chain are generic and tropey. Not bad, just forgettable.
I don't know if you guys can see it. You probably can't. Yeah, you probably can't. But it snowed last night and it looks fucking beautiful. I would like tilt my camera and show you guys, but I don't accidentally like want to dox any of my neighbors. Plus there are kids sledding directly outside of my window and I don't want to get sued by parents or anything. You can probably hear them though, they're loud as shit. Anyways, that was pretty much all I had to say about Astral Chain. So now it's time to answer the question that I stated in the beginning. Is Astral Chain still my favorite Switch game of all time? And the answer to that question is no. It is still a fantastic game, don't get me wrong. It's just that it could have been so much better. Fantastic action, fantastic graphics, fantastic music, a handful of interesting characters and story beats. Astral Chain could have absolutely been a 10 out of 10 game. But due to the blandness of most of the story and characters, I'm gonna have to lower that score down to a 9. But with all of that said, thank you so much for watching this video. I hope you enjoyed it. If you want to see more videos about video games, anime, and more, please consider liking, subscribing, sharing, and all of that stuff. I hope to see you in the next one, and until then, I'm going to be playing outside in the snow like a 6-year-old. Bye! Oh God. Please no. Please don't do this. What did I do?